about one of the most important things you need to know about money, especially when you're making it in your business, which is keeping the money, actually protecting your assets. And with us today to have the conversation is Sarry Ibrahim. Now, Sarry is a financial consultant and health and life insurance agent who specializes in serving high net worth individuals, real estate investors, business owners, and retirees as well. Now, he has extensive experience transitioning retirees from retirement plans to individual Medicare plans and has a reputation for putting his clients first. Now, he is known for his ability to provide financial strategies that protect assets and for his expertise in identifying areas of certainty in financial projections. Now, he has earned the trust and confidence of clients over the years and helps business owners protect their assets from various risks as a licensed advisor as well. Sarry, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Ty, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited you could be here. You have so much expertise. There's so many things that you could talk about. But, it made me realize when I was looking at all of your info that we never really dove into asset protection on the show. And I know it's important. One of my business partners is an asset protection attorney up in Pennsylvania. So this has been drilled into my head. But a lot of people don't even think about this. They don't even know. I mean, I'm still astonished that I have friends that pass away in these unfortunate circumstances and they don't have any of their affairs in order. Very, very, very smart people. So I'm really glad you could be here. And let's start right at the beginning. Like when we talk about asset protection, give me some idea. Well, what are we kind of talking about specifically?
Yeah, exactly. Just like how it sounds. So it's pretty much protecting what you've earned, what you've made, because you mentioned it's not only just about making money, it's also about keeping it too. That's a really important part. So you have to figure out a way as an entrepreneur, as a real estate investor, whatever you're doing, as you're accumulating wealth and assets, you have to figure out a way to protect them from various risks. Like what are the risks of financial or market risks, right? Like you invest money in the stock market, that's exposed to risk or whatever. Those are financial risks involved, or market risks. And then there's also like taxes technically could be some form of risk. Like if you haven't done any tax planning, that your funds could be exposed to more taxes than they need to be. This is something like obviously like a tax planning attorney or accountant would help you with. And then there's also like legal risks, right? People like suing you, protect creditor risks against your assets. I'm not an attorney myself, but this is something that we definitely work with alongside a lot of attorneys. And it's pretty much helping clients protect their assets from these types of legal risks, because there are certain assets that are exempt and non-exempt. Like an easy example could be like cash in a checking account or savings account. That's probably the easiest low-hanging fruit for a creditor, versus money in a trust or an annuity or a pension or a life insurance policy. And it also varies by states. I know you're in Florida. Florida is probably the best state for asset protection, but just kind of make it simple, that's what asset protection is. It's protecting your wealth from various risks.
So what do you think are some of the most common risks that we deal with? And you just kind of flew through some of them. But it's very interesting to me because these are topics that we talk about quite often, but I've never had an expert to actually come in and discuss. So what are some of the biggest risks that entrepreneurs face of having the type of assets you described potentially taken over by a creditor or passing away and their family not getting it? I mean, what are the common risks that you see?
Yeah, common market where their money is stored. Like if it's all entirely in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, there could be a market risk there. So that's one major place. A lot of people have 401ks. Most of their allocations in the 401k are in stocks and mutual funds. So there's obviously a lot of risk there. And then a lot of people don't have wills. It's something that we really think about, right? If you don't have a will, then it just makes the part of passing your assets to your beneficiaries more costly to your beneficiaries, more time consuming, more complicated. So it's important to have a will in place. A lot of people don't even think about that. And I could see it from that way, because it's like we're not thinking about, death and things like that not being around. And then obviously taxes too. Like a lot of people have that I've seen working with clients in like financial analysis meetings. They have a lot of their funds in just 401ks, IRAs, really not considering estate taxes, gift taxes, inheritance taxes, income taxes that goes to beneficiaries. So there's a lot of like tax exposure there. One of the strategies we use is we use life insurance. We are a full service financial services firm, so we use life insurance. And life insurance could make that tax part much, more predictable, because the death benefit tends to be income tax free. And there's also a lot of other estate planning strategies, but I would say for sure market risk and taxes have to have a big risk too. And then also like things being exposed in their name, like in their personal name. Even like LLCs and corporations, I don't think are enough. Those can be pierced, you know. I think that having some, at least owning some assets that are exempt, like then they don't show up in public records, that are not exposed in lawsuits or bankruptcy. A really good example, like cash value life insurance, like cash value, specifically whole life insurance or something with cash, probably one of the most favored assets for asset protection. Nothing about it is public, depending on the state you live in. Like in my state, Illinois, it's really good. Texas, Florida, a couple other states, it's really good for asset protection. So I'd say that it's not about picking one or the other. It's about having like multiple options, and also having multiple professionals involved in it is really important. Like having an accountant, an attorney, a financial advisor, like all three, like working on your situation, or even more in some situations. But those are kind of the biggest and most common risks I see with during financial analysis meetings.
Why do you think that most people don't have a will? And why should they have a will? Like, do you have some nightmare stories or examples? Because I hear these all the time. Like I said, I have an asset protection attorney as my partner, so I hear these stories all the time, and I'm like, wow, it's astonishing though. There's so many people that are younger, even before 60, don't have wills. So why do you think this happens? That they don't have wills, and why is it so important they do?
Yeah, I think it's they don't think they need it in that moment. Like if somebody's 40 years old or 45 years old, they might think like, well, I'm still young for that. Like I don't need a will right now. They might assume that it's something you do when like you're in your 70s. That could be one thing. Or another thing could be that they think that they don't have that many assets that need to go into a will. Like they just have their, a couple cars, their house, a 401k IRA, and that's it really. They don't think they need a will for that. So I think those are probably the two common things. It's just lack of knowledge of needing a will to begin with.
So why should they? I mean, why do you think, what are some of the things that can happen if you don't have a will?
Yeah, if you don't have a will, it goes to something where it's like it goes through probate, and then it's more time consuming for the family to receive the funds, and it's also going to be more costly and more complicated. So when you have a will, it reduces those three things. It makes it easier for the family to get their assets. It also makes it just like concise on who gets what and how much of what. It also reduces the cost of probate and other professionals to get involved in that. So it just gives a clear map on what should happen when you pass away, and where the assets should go.
Besides having a will, with the clients that you deal with, what are some of the most common asset protection mistakes that you see people make?
Yeah, common. Okay, let's see. So common asset protection mistakes. The Let me think for a second. Sorry.
Because I know there's so many
Yeah,
things like, and
yeah,
for example, my partner that's an asset protection attorney says, hey, look, you could take all your stuff, and this is how he describes it, and I love it. He's like, you could take all your stuff and you could just throw it in the yard, and anybody can get it, or you can like build a shed around that stuff and like have some layer of protection. You put locks on the shed, then you can
yeah,
even build a moat around the shed.
yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I love that, because I'm like the moat around the shed kind of guy. So, but I'm interested. I mean, like, well, what are things? Do they not have life insurance? Do they not have a will? I know that's an example. Like, what are some other things you commonly see?
Yeah, exactly. So no will, no life insurance, no clear plan on what should happen to them. Their assets being either exempt or not exempt. Owning properties either not properly structured through LLCs, C corps, S corps, things like that. But really, I see one thing is not people not using the bank on yourself strategy, and I know you're familiar with that strategy. So if you don't mind, I could jump into that strategy,
Yeah,
the
sure,
bank on yourself
absolutely.
strategy. Yeah, so it's using high cash value life insurance for you to essentially do whatever you want with your cash. You build up your cash, grow it tax free. And there's a lot of tax benefits to it, but using that strategy allows you to grow your wealth kind of in a way that's protected from creditors, from various risks, protected from market crashes. So the whole life policy is not going to have things in it that's going to go down when the market goes down. And also, it's mostly tax advantage. So the growth is tax free, the loans are tax free, withdrawals are tax free, the death benefit is income tax free. So I think that it's really important for a lot of entrepreneurs and real estate investors to utilize the strategy because of those, not only the asset protection reasons, but also the taxes and the financial benefits too.
I see a lot of smart guys like you talking about the bank on yourself method, especially tapping into whole life insurance and putting your money there. Why is it so much sense to put your money there versus other investments like real estate or the stock market?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. So I am a real estate investor myself, so I do have funds there as well. And I think that it's important to kind of go through some of the like the pros and cons of various strategies. So when you have, for example, I'll start with real estate. Like real estate tends to, for the most part, increase in value throughout history, except for certain, I would say, like 10-year periods over a 100-year period. Like we look at like 2008 to like 2018 and so on. And I think that's going to keep happening. But for the most part, real estate does tend to increase in value. I think some of the issues or downsides of investing in real estate are liquidity, right? It tends to be an illiquid investment. Whereas, like if you have money in stocks or other financial assets, they're more liquid, but also there's a lot more risk. Like it could take 6 months to a year to predict or see real estate changes. But in the stock market, there could be like one day could change everything in the stock market. So the stock market is far more volatile. And then we look at like bank on yourself, like using whole life insurance. Obviously, it's far more conservative. The rate of return is going to be less, but also the risk, there's essentially zero risk involved. The risk, if you were to measure like risk level from zero to, or actually from 1 to 100, one being practically no risk at all and 100 being entirely at risk, bank on yourself or whole life insurance would fall at one, also alongside like CDs, money market accounts, cash and checking accounts, savings accounts. Those will all fall at one. And then 100 would be like um tech stocks or like startup companies would be like at 100, like very high volatility, very high risk. So it's your job, like as a entrepreneur or investor, to diversify across all those risk levels. You want to have a good portion at like the low ranges of like one, and then also you do want to take on some risk, obviously, because that's where you can see more returns. So this is where like working with a financial advisor really helps. I think that if you were to allocate the one level where your one is at, if you were looking there, I think bank on yourself would probably be the best option for that, because the growth of it is going to be far more than a traditional checking account or savings account that earns interest, and it's gonna have the tax benefits and also the asset protection benefits. Whereas, and then also diversifying beyond the one to the higher risk sides in like stocks and real estate.
So, how does somebody kind of go through and find the right investment strategy? Because there's so many people talking about so many different things you could do, right? Some are all about putting all your money into real estate. Some are about putting all the money in the market. Some are about putting all of your money into whole life. A lot of them are about diversification, about across multiple different of the ones we've discussed, or even beyond that. So what do you think? I mean, how do you advise your clients on how they can kind of find their way and develop the right investment strategy for them?
Yeah, we always go through a full financial analysis with clients, right? We ask about income, what their current asset looks like, what their current assets look like. Are they married? Are they single? Do they have children? When are they planning on retiring? What do they do for work? Do they own multiple businesses, real estate? Are they actively involved in real estate or passively involved? We go through all of these things in the financial analysis meeting, and then also like, what do they want? Like, what do they want to do when they retire? When do they want to retire? We get a good idea of like who the client is and where they want to go, because it's really important. One client might have a goal of reaching a net worth of like, let's just say $1 million in 10 years. Another client might want $10 million in 10 years, depending on their situation, their goals, everything's going to be completely different. So that's probably the most important thing. And I'd recommend, like, if you're working with a financial advisor, you're working with somebody, make sure you go through a financial analysis meeting to understand what your situations are. Because I've seen a lot of times people look at financial planning as like almost like a commodity, something like you buy over the counter. Like, everybody's doing this stock or everybody's doing this financial asset or everybody's doing this thing. Let's buy that, let's skip over the advisor, skip over the person and just try to buy it. And that can get you in a lot of trouble. Obviously, you could lose a lot of money. You could pick the wrong thing. It's also like, imagine if you hired a lawyer and you're like, yeah, do this, do that. I want this trust. I want this LLC. The attorney is going to tell you, like, let me do my job, so let the advisor do their job, make sure they're asking the right questions, going through like a full financial analysis. I think the financial analysis is the most important part of the whole process. It should take, like, in itself, that should take like at least an hour to do, or sometimes even multiple sessions, to truly understand like the client situation, and then also like what they want to accomplish in life.
Hmm, I love that. And then you think there's an idea of when you should start a financial plan? Like, is there a certain age, for example, that you should probably be considering, starting a financial plan?
Yeah, this also goes back into when we talked about wills. I think a lot of people don't do financial plans because number one, they don't think they need to do that. They think that just having an accountant, having a lawyer here and there is enough for your whole financial plan. And I think that you need somebody who's going to specialize in your financial plan. Also, I think that a lot of people skip out, and I've seen this like working with clients, they skip out on financial plans because they think they don't have enough assets that they need a financial advisor or financial planner for. And then that's also not true. But you still need at least somebody to guide you in the thinking process of how you're going to handle your finances, how you're going to tackle your debt, how you're going to expand your portfolio, like how you're going to do more things. Like you'll need a plan for that.
What about trusts? You mentioned trusts. What is a trust? How do trusts work?
Yeah, so a trust is essentially like, for example, if you had to make it simple, let me see how I can make it simple. So if you had, for example, you owned a house or a real estate property, you can own it in your name personally, you can own it in an LLC, or you could own it in a trust. So essentially it's like something that owns your assets. And there's a couple different kinds of trusts. There's revocable and irrevocable. And the reason why people, I guess, do these types of things is for asset protection, to protect their assets from creditors, and then also for tax advantages. There's tax differences. So I don't want to go too far into trust and what they are and how they work, because I'm not an attorney. I don't want to give legal advice. But at the same time, I think that trusts are really important because of those two main things, because of taxes and because of asset protection. So that's why people look into trust, why they look at either revocable or irrevocable. It's really how to protect their assets and more importantly, how to pass their assets to the next generation.
So, what type of assets should you consider putting in a trust versus an LLC? So, for example, I always preach that you want to reduce liability. So, every asset I own, like vehicle wise, is owned in a separate LLC. Each car I own is in a separate LLC. I'm a pilot, so I have a plane. It's owned in a separate LLC. So, are those assets that should really and this is, you're not an attorney, and this isn't legal advice. But in your thought and what you advise your clients, are those the kind of assets you put in a trust? Because those aren't long term. I'm not going to pass my car on to my kids, for example. So when do I go with an LLC for some limited protection, which is what LLC is, right? Limited protection. So,
Yeah.
or when do I take a step deeper and go into a trust?
Yeah, it would definitely be so I would think that it's assets that you want to and you want your beneficiaries to take over. Also, long-term assets that you're planning on owning for a long time. Like real estate is a big one. Real estate, funds in the stock market, other types of life insurance policies sometimes go through trust because of estate planning benefits. Like they can potentially go outside of your estate, so that's going to reduce your estate taxes. So I think that it depends on what an attorney advises you, but I would say like long-term assets, like long things that you want to keep in your family for a long time should definitely go into or would probably go into a trust.
So, any disadvantages of a trust?
I would say that if you did like irrevocable, like you can't change anything in it. You can so it's essentially irrevocable. Also, the fees, it's going to cost you a lot of money to hire attorneys and things like that. So you only want to do that if you think that probably your financial advisor would recommend hiring an estate planning attorney and then going through the whole trust, establishing trust and things like that.
One of the things you talked about earlier that's a hot button for a lot of entrepreneurs is tax liability.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned whole life as a way around that, but a legal way around that. But what other ways do you find that we could think about to minimize our tax exposure, minimize tax liability?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so a couple of different things. So there's a difference between tax filing and tax planning, right? So tax filing is like what most people do. Like this year, for example, we're in 2023 now, where most people, I would say, not most people, but some people have already started filed their taxes for 2022. I think a lot of business owners, me being one, kind of wait and file the taxes later on, just because we going through deductions and things like that. So we're looking back at 2022, what happened, like how much did we make in 2022, how much did we spend, what qualifies for credits, deductions. So it's kind of retroactive. Like we already finished 2022 and now we're trying to figure out how to pay the least amount of taxes for 2022. That would be kind of a retroactive approach, which is tax filing. Tax planning, on the other hand, is long term. It's looking forward. It's also figuring out a way to, while your income is increasing and while your assets are increasing, figure out a way to like reduce the amount of taxes you'll pay. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. Whether it's through your business, whether you're a real estate professional, investing in, depreciation, all types of strategies. But I think that I wanted to make it clear that it's there's a difference between tax filing and tax planning. And most people I've seen really understand tax filing, like what can I do this year? What credit can I claim this year? And so on. But I think that it's eventually gonna there's going to be certain options you're not going to be able to always exercise because you need time to implement those things, like if it's in your business or real estate or whatever the case is. But when you do tax planning and you're looking forward, there are definitely ways. I've talked to some tax professionals. There are definitely some ways where you could potentially reduce all of your taxes in the future looking forward, through proper tax planning and allocating to business and real estate and things like that. So tax planning, tax filing, understand the differences, and then also find professionals who could help with either scenario.
Well, what about minimizing debts while still protecting financial assets? It's kind of along the line of what you're saying, but what do you think are some of the best ways to do that, where we can have a better retirement by helping reduce or eliminate the debts we have while still kind of increasing valuable assets that are somewhat protected?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ty, because a lot of people think that you have to do one over the other. Like you can't pay down debt, you can't increase your income or your savings or wealth until you pay down debt. And I think that's not true. I think you should do the both at the same time. And this is where bank on yourself comes in, right? Like you could allocate funds to a whole life policy, which is technically building up your net worth. And then you could leverage it. You could borrow against that, pay down debt. So now what you're doing is you're taking over debt from different places and insourcing it now into your own policy, and then grow your wealth that way while you're paying down debt at the same time. Eventually, you could have all your debt paid off and then have the whole life policy built up with reserves. Because if you look at it this way, if let's just say you have $100,000 in debt, right, and then you're paying back $1,000 a month towards the debt directly, and let's just say, assuming that there's no interest occurring or anything, it's just 100 months. It's going to take you 100 months to pay off the debt. So after 100 months, you pay off the debt. Now, what do you have? You have no debt, but also you have no savings at all. But if you were putting $1,000 a month towards a whole life policy and then borrowing against the whole life policy to pay towards the debt, yeah, it's probably going to take you a little bit longer than 100 months to pay off that debt because portions of the premium are going to the life policy. But after the debt has been paid off, now you now have a whole life policy with, I don't know, I have done the math on it, but you'd have X amount of dollars in addition to paying off the debt. So I would figure out a way to pay off debt. I would actually figure out a way to start saving first and then pay off debt.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a really smart way to do it, because that way, once you build in the process where you can actually save the money, then it's easier to be able to then focus on paying off the debt after. What about technology? Any technology that can help us along the way when it comes to asset protection?
Yeah, technology, I haven't really come across any. I know for I'm trying to think, for tax planning, Holistiplan is a good software for that. But for asset protection, I haven't come across. I know you're really, really big into technology. So if you do come across any technology for asset protection, let me know.
Sure. Sounds good. What about finding the right people here? We've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about insurance, talked about life insurance. We've talked about asset protection. We've talked about financial planning. When people are looking for experts in these industries, are they looking for one person that can do all of it? Are they looking for people to specialize in each? Or how do we go about finding the right expert in these fields?
Yeah, for sure. So it's definitely the specialty aspect. Like, a lot of people compare it to like a physician. Like you want to go to a cardiologist if you have a heart problem, or a kidney specialist. And the more specific that specialty is, typically the better the overall physician or surgeon will be in the experience. So same thing in financial planning and taxes and accounting, right? Like the more specific the more specific their work is, probably the better quality it would be. Like I've seen people who are not only tax professionals, but they're tax professionals for real estate investors, with net worths above $10 million. So like if you're a real estate investor with a net worth of greater than $10 million, that's the person who you want to talk to about your taxes. Like it's a very direct and niche. So I think you need a network, right? Because it'd be very hard to find like a tax professional that only works with real estate investors with net worth greater than 10 million, an attorney who only deals with clients in a certain state, plus, if you're doing like research and development tax credits, or like financial advisor who only focuses on certain types of assets, you need a network for that. You need referrals, because those types of professionals, I think it's going to be a little bit limited. Google, things like that, yeah, it'll connect you, but you're better off getting referrals. And when you have like, I always refer clients because I'm not a tax attorney, I'm not a tax attorney or an accountant, so I'm constantly referring people in the right direction. So you want to work with somebody like that, like who has a network. And I think the referrals are going to be a little bit stronger than just going to like Google and searching for like, tax professional near me or asset protection near me. But definitely the more focused their niche is, the better quality of work I think you'll get for sure.
I love it. Sarry, it's been phenomenal having you on today. Where can everybody go to be able to learn more?
Yeah, so thank you for having me on. And they can go to thinkinglikeabank.com. That's thinkinglikeabank.com. They could find everything there. My LinkedIn, YouTube channel, my scheduling link, everything can be found at thinkinglikeabank.com.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much for coming on with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so listen, if you're watching this, there's a lot of stuff here that we've talked about, and there's a lot of protections that you need when we've talked about asset protection. We've talked about whole life. We've talked about investing the right way. We've talked about getting wills. There's so many more things that we could dive into. These are deep topics that we just scratched the surface of. So to learn more, go to thinkinglikeabank.com. That's thinkinglikeabank.com. Everything you need is there. You can even get a free download right there that gives you a lot more insight, as well as accessing social media links and a lot of other resources that can help you be able to really get the down and dirty on asset protection and make sure that you are protected, because the last thing you want to do is like leave your family high and dry or create problems where you have all this exposure that's not unnecessary, where you're building wealth and then could lose wealth like that. And there's plenty of stories out there where that exact same thing happens. So don't let it happen to you. Make sure you visit thinkinglikeabank.com.